Welcome into Courts of Thunder. There's no actual, normally we say it's like the Wimbledon recap or Wimbledon episode number 3 or something like that, Greg, but this isn't any of those things. This is just, we wanted to hang out and talk about all the tennis that we've been watching for the last 3 weeks.
This is giving the people what they want. That's what
right.
It is. No, it is. It's our risers and fallers episode.
Yep.
It's our getting ready for the U.S. Open episode. And it's recapping Cincinnati, Toronto and Montreal, even Washington a little bit, which I
spent some time
to
with.
Go to.
Yep.
It's recapping the U.S. hardcourt season, which is, one of the best times of year. It's kind of the palate cleanser before the draw preview, because once you get into the draw preview, start looking at matchups. This is the time of year I enjoy. This time of year,
this is what we've been watching. I know both Greg and I have been spending a lot of time with these tournaments. We've been texting each other back and forth. I, like a nerd, was tweeting about a doubles match that nobody else on the planet was watching. And
yeah, I don't go that far. I got to admit, I never watched doubles.
I love doubles tennis. I always have. I don't know what it is. There's just something about, like, I think it's because it's the most, I know I'm not as good as a tennis player is when I play tennis, but it at least feels like the same sport that I'm playing. Like when I hit a big cross-court shot, I'm like, I feel like I could do that. I would get my ass kicked, but I might be able to hit a nice shot, like every now and then if I was playing a real tennis player. When you watch doubles and play doubles, it's the most significant difference. They are doing something at a pace that no human should be capable of doing these things at. Their reaction time is so absurdly different than anything I've ever seen that I'm obsessed with it. I'm obsessed.
No, yeah, I don't like doubles. It's all like serves and volleys and tall people.
There is a lot of that.
It's not my game. No, but when you do watch it, it is fairly entertaining. That reminds me, though, you saying, like, you thinking, you could be out there or whatever, of that poll of like that 27% of American men, or it was even higher than that, thought they could win a point off of Serena Williams
because they're idiots. They're idiots. They have no idea what they're talking about. I'm not saying that I could compete. I'm saying what I would do, the body motion that I would have to hit a shot would be similar. Like it would be the same thing. Whereas when you go play doubles with your idiot friends, you cannot have a 10 exchange rally at the net where everything is happening within nanoseconds.
Well, part of my issue with doubles as like an adult, though, is like it's like the stepping stone to pickleball, which is a plague that has been attacking this country in tennis courts. And my thing too is like I want to get a workout.
Yeah.
Like, doubles feels like I'll transition into that when I have to, but I feel like that's retiring from singles.
There is something.
It's great. My dad's 80 and he plays doubles multiple times a week. That's amazing, but I'm not there yet.
Well, I would still encourage you to try to find this shot, this rally from the Johnson Krajicek. They lost in the championship match in Cincinnati, but
it was insane. It was
one
really
particular point was nuts. All right, Greg, do you want to start? Should we start in a pleasant way? Should we start with risers?
Let's go to the risers and fallers and go back and forth, whatever we want.
All right.
I'm going to start unpleasant. How about that?
Okay.
I hate to do it, but I think it's the biggest story or one of them in tennis right now. And we haven't done this podcast. So my fallers are the big 3. I'm going to put them all together.
Okay.
Actually.
I'm good with that.
Just because I think if we're setting the table for the U.S. Open, Nadal and Federer are no longer stories as of Friday. And Djokovic will be, presumably.
I mean, he's at least in the field as of right now. He's at least scheduled to play.
I'm just going to link them together because the transition that everyone was hoping to happen or was expecting to happen at some point, it's happening in a way that it often does in sports, which is really unsatisfactory, which is just like these guys get old and they're not available. Roger Federer announced, not only is he getting surgery and out for the rest of the year, I think he raised questions about whether he's going to be able to play competitive tennis at a high level again. I think that's an open question. He wants to. It really would bum me out if he does not get to have the year-long victory tour, like a la Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, when they would give him different presents.
Yeah, to get a rocking chair, correct. You get a. They're gonna give him a cow. They're gonna do all those things.
Or for the sake of Washington, for Cincinnati and different tournaments, it's hey, fill up the entire stadium a couple more times too. And it's such a bummer that he's at that level. And then for Nadal to back that up and announce he's out the rest of the season too, after giving it a go in Washington. after really entertaining the fans there for a couple matches, after trying to give it a go in Canada, and then realized this foot injury.
It was so electric. I want to talk more about the Washington experience in general, but I cannot put into words how electric that place was just on the premise of Rafael Nadal being there.
And then when he played, I mean, those two matches were unreal.
Yep.
Unreal atmospheres, and it stinks because if you look at all the Masters Series events this year, none of the finals have included a member of the Big Three. Now that's except wait, am I wrong about the clay court ones?
I'd have to go back and check on.
Maybe it's that every finalist was different because of course Nadal and Djokovic made the Rome final, for instance, but it's like different players at every event, and all of that almost is because the other guys haven't been available. Federer hasn't been there. Nadal's either been hurt, and Djokovic has been, sitting a lot of them out. And so that's why I include Djokovic here, too, because I think those Olympic losses hurt. I think that was the worst 24 hours of his life. And I'm curious, of his tennis life. I'm curious how he is going to respond. But I think sitting out Cincinnati and Toronto just gave more reason to believe that, there's a chance he loses in the US Open too. So he's obviously in a different spot than the other two guys. He is the number one player of the world. But it's just crazy. This is sort of how I think this era is starting to end. It's not going to be some amazing torch pass moment when Medvedev wins, the US Open over Nadal. He had a chance for that, or Djokovic. He had a chance for that moment, but it's this is how it's happening. This is how it happens in sports.
Look, I still think Djokovic is a factor here, and
he's the number one player. He's the favorite of the U.S. Open.
I'm not willing to bury all three of them. I understand what you're saying or what you're trying to say, and
it's probably a stretch to include Djokovic, but I do think entering this tournament, he feels more vulnerable, obviously, than he has for the last 52 weeks. So that's about it.
He still won all three Grand Slam tournaments that we've seen this year, right? That's what we're talking about, a guy going for history, and we're describing him as vulnerable. But I get what you're saying. I do understand exactly what you're saying, and this is the reality. The reality is we knew this was going to come. We just kind of wanted to believe, because these guys have defied so many things, they would continue to defy more. And the reality is that was never all that likely. It does seem as though Roger Federer wants to keep playing. And look, Venus Williams has kept playing. And these guys have the right to continue to play for as long as they can be competitive. And these tournaments are willing to have them there, right? They have the right to do that. And it's not as if Roger Federer embarrassed himself at Wimbledon. He played
made the quarters.
Correct. And so I'm good with that. I'm good with, and ultimately it might just be that he's a Wimbledon player for a little while, because he still feels as though he can be competitive there, and he kind of realizes at the other spots it's going to be really tough. I don't know. We will see how that all plays out. Nadal, there's no doubt in my mind that Rafael Nadal is going to be a threat at the French Open next year if he's healthy, because come on, let's not kid ourselves. But it's just that when we get to Grand Slam tennis, there has been an assumption for some time that these would be the guys, and this is going to be the first time. Well, that's not true. I guess last year we dealt with this, right? There was no Federer and Nadal. There were also no crowds. It didn't feel like they were playing a Grand Slam in New York last summer, so it was kind of hard to compare it. But
this foot injury is not going away too, and you do worry about Nadal's health breaking down. The U.S. Open is the second most important event to him, I think, because of his success there. That it boggles the mind, but he won more U.S. Opens last decade than Djokovic or Federer. If anyone would have ever predicted that, that kind of turned into his tournament. The U.S. Open is the number one reason why Nadal can even be involved in the GOAT race to me,
because it wasn't just otherwise the French Open.
At least at the majors, it wasn't just the French Open. He's so good in New York. The crowds love him there. And so that would be a bummer. It feels a little less big without Nadal there, and Greg, without Fed.
I feel, because there's no other way. I feel like you can throw in Serena Williams' name to this conversation. I hate doing that, but I feel like you can, because she's just not playing tennis.
Yeah, we'll get back. We'll get into her on Friday once the draw comes out. But you're right, in a similar way to Djokovic, but without anywhere near the results. She is really picking and choosing her spots, but we expect to see her in New York. And man, that is asking a lot when it's 2 out of 3 sets. We talked about it in the Olympic show, but I do think that's always a factor in women's tennis that makes it a little harder for the favorites make it through 2 weeks. That all, that there's no backstop that Djokovic has with best of 5 sets where he can keep falling down 2 sets, which he likes to do lately.
He's got a thing or two for that, but it's worked out
2
for
to
him.
1, and he can come back. Serena does not have that, so she better be sharp or get a good draw. But we'll get into that later in the week.
All right. So my question is, do you want me to do my
go risers? That was a bummer of a start. I just felt like that was like, all right, well, let's get that part out of the way.
Okay. I understand what you're doing, and we have to lead with that because they're the players that people care about the most, but they're just not the people that are involved. So, okay, we'll get into risers. Hang on. My first riser is the one that I've been waiting for some time to talk about. It's certainly not the sexy name to lead with because he's barely played tennis since this, but I got such joy in DC watching Jensen Brooksby play tennis that I've been waiting for weeks to be able to talk about him. I'm not.
That's why I went with the big names first.
Yeah, thank you.
You leading with Jensen Brooksby. I was really surprised. I thought it would be, Badosa, but here we go.
No, I'm leading with Jensen Brooksby. I got to spend time down in DC. I got to watch Jannik Sinner play a couple of tennis matches. That was great, and there's going to be another name that might pop up on this list, but. Jensen Brooksby was someone I'm just going to flat out admit to you I had not heard of before I arrived in DC that week. And he proceeded to defeat in order Kevin Anderson, Francis Tiafoe, FAA, Felix Auger-Aliassime, and John Millman before ultimately falling to Jannik Sinner. But even in that match, he went to the tiebreak in the first set of that semifinal against Sinner. Now, he wasn't able to continue that train rolling. When he got to Canada, he lost in the first round to Basilashvili, although even in that match, he took a set. This is someone who hadn't played a professional match as of 4 months ago and rolled to the semifinals of what was it's a 500 event, but it was a 500 event with a really good field.
It was a great field. Yeah. Probably the best Washington's ever had.
And he looked great, and he looked like he belonged, and he did a lot of everything. And that was what made it so much fun to watch him. I love those players that just kind of do a little bit of everything, that have a lot of offense and a lot of defense, and I love watching a player like that. I'm not going to sit here and attempt to tell you, by the way, he did move into the top 100 after this run, and he did get a wild card into the U.S. Open, so he will get his first opportunity to play in a slam in New York. I'm not trying to tell you that he's a threat to make a deep run in New York. I'm not trying to be crazy about any of this. I'm not going to say deep run. I think he's a threat to win a couple of matches. I don't think he's a threat to make a deep run. But
he got the shout out from Andy Murray on Twitter, which to me is more valuable than any semifinal appearance. When Andy Murray says he likes watching
you, yes,
then he's always right. People gave him grief because he once said Caroline Garcia was going to be the #1 player in the world, and she turned out to be number 4.
And they've never let him forget about that.
She got close, but he blesses you, and he just says how entertaining, and so do all the other young Americans. It's been a great summer for the young American. I guess I'll piggyback on that and just say, Mackie McDonald in that tournament,
made the run to the final.
Player who made the final. Had a great run, beat great players, beat Nishikori in a terrific match in the semifinals. Brooksby, though, is top 50 in the race. That just means 21 points.
Yep.
Right now. And as you mentioned, kind of turned pro later than some do. He's 20, earlier than some do. And yeah, I think it's been a good year for the young Americans with Korda and Brooksby, and Tiafoe is coming along. Opelka makes the Canada finals. Certainly more positive than it's been for a couple of years, with Brooksby and Korda kind of being, okay, we might have something here.
I'm somehow trying to separate all these things, Greg, because there's so much of me that with some of the other guys, I'm like, yeah, if the standard is low, then you can say this is a good thing if you're accepting that you have a low standard. I guess the reason I'm allowing myself to get excited about Brooksby is he's the guy that hasn't screwed it up yet. He's the guy that hasn't let me down.
Korda hasn't either.
No, Korda hasn't yet either. You're right. I mean, he let me down at the French, but other than that, he hasn't let me down.
He's just starting. You're tough.
I was so excited about Seb Korda going into the French, and then he turns around and gets dismissed quite quickly. That was the only disappointing part. But realistically, no, you're right. I haven't truly been let down by Seb Korda yet. And Jensen Brooksby, someone I'm going to allow myself to get hurt by. I'm going to let him hurt me. I'm going to believe in him. I'm going to buy into him as being a thing, and I'm going to allow him to break my heart consistently. This is like the girl Jen that I dated in high school. I knew better. She was going to break my heart. I'm going to let Jensen Brooksby break my heart.
I also think like you can allow lower expectations to be fine. Like Mackie McDonald's a guy I'm always going to root for. He's like a young half Asian kid, like my kids.
Sure.
Very short, fun style of play. Is coming back from a major injury, and in that tournament, he beats Kyrgios. The next match he beats Benoit Paire in a good match. Benoit Paire's playing well right
now.
What
a weird bit that is, by the way, where Benoit Paire's a thing.
Right. He made the quarters. He made the quarters in Cincinnati. And then he beat Ivashka, who's playing well. And it's like, okay, like maybe the cap here is a top 30 player, but that is an amazing accomplishment for someone like Mackie McDonald. And it's just like, you like adding these extra names to the mix, and it's never a bad thing when it's an American. Opelka, maybe not as fun to watch, but I do like him. I like him as a person. Like he's got a good personality, and he did just make a Masters final. So if your boy Korda or Brooksby did that, you would be singing their praises. But you're right. I'm not into watching him.
I can't do it.
I can't do it. At least he's leaning. He's kind of leaning into this.
He is. But he's also. I'll give the only credit I'll give to Opelka.
He beat Tsitsipas in a Masters.
I'm aware. The credit that I'll give Opelka as far as watching him is he's not as much of a donkey as John Isner is. Like he does at least, and people take such connotations of that. I think you know what I'm trying. Like he's not. John Isner will flat dog it. Like we'll just dog it. It's not just about him being big. Like he'll just say, I'm not going to bother to play.
When he's returning serves, especially if he's down.
Like he's down
30 love.
He won't. And
like I said, the fact that Opelka went to art museums with Venus Williams in Rome or wherever,
that's pretty cool.
That's all I need to hear.
Yep.
I'm gonna.
Okay. Let me hit the button.
Courts of Thunder.
Come on, man. People. It's like going to see Eve 6. They have to play Inside Out. We got to get you to do the Courts of Thunder bit.
I'm just like so excited to talk Ash Barty. Let's talk Ash Barty next.
Let's talk
I got a big list, but her winning Cincinnati and the way that she won it, I've never seen her play any better.
Dominant.
She steamrolled everyone. She won Wimbledon and then Wimbledon and then won her next WTA tournament. I know she didn't win the
time
Olympics.
Off. Exactly. Yep.
She didn't win her next Olympics, but she did that. If you look back when she won her French Open, she won the tournament right after that too. If you look at her year, she's now won 5 titles. She's 14-1 versus top 20 opponents. That is an outrageous number. Sometimes the draw is open for her. Sometimes it doesn't. I don't care. She is entering New York as the heavy favorite, and she's solidifying number 1 in a way that probably hasn't happened since Serena. I mean,
that's fair.
No,
that's not true.
I'm gonna say that for sure.
Okay. Are you only saying that because Naomi was only dominant on one surface? Is that
because she's never been dominant on the tour level? Barty is a 52 week a year play. And I know she took last year off because of the pandemic. You throw that out. She is dominant. She is I'm not saying she's Djokovic or anything, but she's doing what like greats do, backing up the Grand Slams. Okay, she adds the second Grand Slam, fairly quick to the first one that she had. And the fact that she's now on hard courts, just like the favorite. You said you have a hard time believing Osaka's not the favorite on hard courts any tournament that she enters. She's not the favorite coming into this one.
No.
And she can just make you crazy. She just kept hitting slices to Azarenka, and Azarenka like lost her mind. It was like 6-0-6-1 or 6-0-6-2, but it was
6-0-6-2. Yes,
it was a game away from a double bagel against Azarenka, who was the defending champion.
Yep,
she was losing her mind because like Barty will see a weakness in you, and she'll just like pound it over and over and over. And I just think she deserves a lot of credit, and she's impressive right now. She's like a true number 1, and that's something people supposedly wanted out of the women's tour. You got one right now, and I think to beat her in Flushing is going to be tough. It's doable, but it's going to be tough unless she starts feeling some sort of pressure as like this heavy favorite right now. I think she's sort of embracing who she is as the number one right now. When she's 14-1 against top 20, that is embracing it.
I hear what you're saying. I will still follow it up by saying I think there's a little bit of she has to prove that, and I still think that like the players behind her are not so far off that on the right day they couldn't just beat her and there was nothing wrong with her. I don't think that she has separated herself so significantly from the next group. And part of that,
but it'll take that for her to lose. I expect her to be in the semis, you know. And
yeah, I don't think I disagree with that.
I expect her to be there. And sometimes like she ended up playing Teichmann in the final of Cincinnati, but it's like Barty's not losing those matches to Teichmann in the semis like Pliskova, who's having a great summer too. You could throw her into the risers. You know, she makes the final in Canada and she makes the semis in Cincinnati. But what happens each time? It's like she has another bad final, loses to Camilla Giorgi, which is a wild result, and then she loses.
You're taking away everybody there. You're taking away all of my women's risers that were on this list.
I'm just referring to what's been happening. But to me, Barty is the story kind of entering the US Open. She is the clear alpha. That's all.
I don't in no ways disagree with the idea that she is absolutely the player to beat on the women's side.
She just won Wimbledon and she won Cincinnati in a row. So that says it all to me. Without, and the way she did it in Cincinnati is partly what I wanted to hit on. She steamrolled everyone. Literally wasn't competitive, and that was something a little new from her. Virtually no one was even competitive against her. She killed them all.
There was only one set that I think went 7-5 the entire time. I mean, it was absolute dominance, no doubt.
And that was the Kerber second set. I did not see the first set of that match, which she wiped. It was like 6-2. The second set of that match, we were eating at lunch. My kids are sitting there, and they don't really care, but they do follow it. And I just was like, you guys should watch this because this is the highest level that there is.
Yeah, correct.
Like the way these two women are playing right now, it doesn't get any better because the two of them were playing at their absolute best. And Kerber, I love her for stepping up and making that second set that good. I've never seen Barty play any better than in Cincinnati. And for that second set, Kerber was right there with her playing absolutely lights out. And I was just like, this is just incredible.
It was incredible tennis. There's no question. Yeah. Incredible. All right. Let me get to a faller.
I'm not taking your risers. I'm just like listing.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, but these are all players that were on my list. You jerk.
So list them later.
I probably should have. Maybe I shouldn't have started with Brenson. Brenson. I just made Jensen Brooksby a person named Brenson.
Well, one of the problems with Jensen Brooksby, I'm glad you mentioned
is first name. Yeah, correct.
No, just the total name. Like it's a bad look for tennis. People think that tennis is this like
this hoity-toity
rich white sport, and Jensen Brooksby.
It doesn't help. You're right. It does not help that at all. All right. And again, this is based on a standard, but my faller is going to be Steph. It's going to be Tsitsipas, who I think has had as much
for me. You know, this is like a fantasy draft where we're taking each other's players.
The reality is, coming off of the French Open final, I expected there to be a letdown, and there was, right? Like he was quickly dismissed at Wimbledon. I thought from there, the way he played early at the Olympics, I looked at him and said, he's fine. He could absolutely win a gold medal. And it's been so shaky, and the other stuff that's creeping in now on top of it. And you and I went back and forth a little bit over the weekend about the timeout and the coaching thing and the anti-vax stuff. And like all of it has made him from a guy that I was finding myself 5 months ago saying, of this group of guys, this might be the one that I'm embracing the most and I'm going to live and die with the most as I watch, to now saying, I don't even enjoy him. Like it's tough for me. I love watching him play tennis. It's tough, man. It's tough, man. Steph has a great opportunity here.
I mean, come on, you're a Lamar Jackson fan. We both are.
That's true.
You know, I am able to separate anti-vax.
That part is that's fine. And I haven't really
Cam Newton.
I don't openly root against Djokovic either. I'm not openly rooting against Steph, but like he's just not as embraceable to me as I wanted him to be. Here's my issue, right? You have this opportunity. Things open up for you because, as you mentioned, the big three are out of the picture. You prove what you're capable of doing. And I don't doubt that clay will always be his best surface, right? Like, I think he will be the biggest threat at the French Open for years to come. But that being said, his game should suit him to be an all-surface player. And this is a chance to be playing your best and to have a 4-1 lead in the third set of a semifinal and to blow that.
Double break.
Double break. Correct. That's important. 4-1 double break lead in the third set of a semifinal against Zverev, and to blow it is, I got a lot of red flags right now with where Steph is. And again, that's based on a standard. I still think he's a threat. I still think he's playing largely pretty well, and he's likely going to be winning matches and making some sort of run in New York. But this is
never has before, by the way. I just happened to check this, and
when I say some sort, I don't expect him to be a threat to win the title in New York.
He should be. Where are we with Steph Tsitsipas if he's not a threat to win? I think he is a threat to win. By the way, he's never done it, but he just went semifinal in Canada and Cincinnati. I mean, and he's one of the top 5 players in the world. There's no arguing that, right? So
yes,
he's
all
gotta
that's
be.
True.
He's got to be.
All of that's true. Look, it's based on the standard. I thought this was a big opportunity for him this summer, and he has not taken advantage of it in 3 marquee, going back to back Olympics, Canada, Cincinnati. He's come up short all 3 times and not even made finals. And I don't know. I feel like he should be in a better place than that. I'm in a weird place with the coaching stuff, Greg. I think you and I have talked about it before. I am definitely at the point where just stop and allow there to be coaching at this point. Like, we've been kidding ourselves for some time about the fact that coaching occurs. It happens. It's just done in unique ways. I am at the place where the WTA introduced coaching. I think it's time for all of tennis to embrace coaching, and for no other reason than because some of the mental health stuff that we've talked about before, like the just sheer need to talk to somebody, and the idea that, like, why is
doing it anyways? That's the thing,
right? Like, why is it so terrible that someone might tell you, "Hey, you're noticing that this guy's pounding your backhand," right? Like, why is that such an awful thing? Like, what does that make someone like less deserving champion if someone tells them that? Like,
for context, in one of the funnier moments of the weekend, in Zverev versus Tsitsipas, Tsitsipas goes into the locker room, and Zverev accuses him of texting his dad from the locker room, and the camera's even there, like showing
and his dad's on the phone.
Tsitsipas, right. Texting. It's like, oh yeah, he probably is.
Which we don't know that he was texting Steph.
Doesn't matter. He definitely knows.
And he played completely differently when he came back out of the locker room.
Well, and his dad coaches openly with him on the court. So Correct. The whole thing is stupid. I'm with you on the coaching thing. I'm just surprised, to me, how he loses. That's the number one concern, because if you look at his year, it's been incredible. It has been the best year of his career. So he's taken another step off of what was a really high bar already. Made the semis of Australia, the finals of the French. He won Monte Carlo. So he did win a Masters, although kind of like the 10th out of 10 Masters, if you want to.
Yeah, that's probably true.
But he did win.
Probably true.
Quarters in Miami, semis in Canada, semis in Cincinnati. I mean, those are like, that's an incredible, top 5 year. The problem is he chokes. Like the Real Tennis podcast, we have to like cover these guys, no challenges. Maybe they don't say, like, they wouldn't say that, like, this guy just chokes.
No,
like,
he does.
He chokes.
He does. 100%.
And a lot of players have gone through that where they can't finish. But with Tsitsipas, it's just like crazy. It's like watching a car crash at this point. You almost tune into a Tsitsipas match midway through the third set now with the feeling like, how can he agonizingly lose this? Because he's done it in so many different ways in big spots. Of course, he's won a lot. You don't get to all those results without winning a lot of big matches.
And that's
too.
So
it's a little unfair. But look at some of those Australian Opens where the one where he blew all the match points. He finds creative ways to lose. And even though they all have trouble closing, he seems to have the most. And at this point, I mean, man, he has to be getting used to devastating losses. It's just sort of like part of his shtick at this point.
And somebody could say it's one thing to blow it to Zverev fine. Although we're still talking about 4-1. We're still talking about double break in the third set. That's nuts. I don't.
And he
care
had to come. And to be fair, he had to come back from a set and a breakdown.
Right, to get there. That's fine. You're right. And you're right about that. You're right about that. But like, it's one thing to blow out Zverev, to be in a tiebreak in the second set with a chance to finish off Riley Opelka and to not be able to do it. Come on, man. Like, come on. And again, the standard that we're dealing with is this was open for you. There's no Nadal. There's no Djokovic for the last couple of tournaments. There's no Dominic Thiem. Like, this is an open opportunity.
Also out for the rest of the year. We didn't.
Correct. Mention. He's not going to be at the U.S. Open either, right? Like, there's this open opportunity for you to seize, and given the way you look, and given that you don't have certain accusations against you, like, you have this opportunity to sort of seize being, you know, maybe the face of this group of guys and the next beloved player. And you just got to get the job done. Like, you have to get the job done to become that guy. And he's not getting the job done right now. Could it change? Sure. To your point, is he a threat to win the U.S. Open? Of course he's a threat to win the U.S. Open. And if he does, everything changes, right? Like, we don't ever have this conversation again. But right now, it's starting to be a bit of a lingering conversation with Tsitsipas that he's right there, but not quite good enough to become the guy just yet.
No, like, losing from ahead over and over. He has to win. Yeah, winning the U.S. Open does take that away. But then you even see, okay, does that have an impact on how he plays after that? Because it is absolutely a thing. With that said, it's interesting to see these guys are showing up. And so I'm going to go for my next riser here. This is just more of a thought. Courts of Thunder. Hey, here's what's rising. A little stability in both tours. Okay. How about the fact that the top 4 seeds made it to the Cincinnati semis? It was basically the 4 guys that we've circled. Rublev has entered this mix late.
Right.
He's done it over the last 52 weeks. And so he's there right now. And it's Medvedev, Zverev, Tsitsipas. And then Rublev is starting to make some noise. He makes his second Masters final, finally beats Medvedev. He also is checking off boxes. He's maybe not at the level that those other guys have. Certainly hasn't had the results of his career, but that's pretty impressive. Medvedev wins Canada. And okay, he doesn't make it all the way to the end. It is so hard to win those 2 back-to-back. Almost no one ever does it. They're right in a row, and they're on these hot, hard courts. So actually, I think it was impressive for him to make it to the semis of Cincinnati after winning Toronto. That is not easy. A lot of people, we saw it, like Jannik Sinner wins Cincinnati, then he doesn't win wins Washington. He doesn't win a match. Next. It is hard to just win 2 straight weeks, especially those 2 Masters. So the fact Medvedev backed it up and got to the semis, to me, he is just as much of a favorite entering the U.S. Open as Zverev. They're maybe a tick below Djokovic, certainly, but it was a good couple weeks for him too. And
can I have just a quick thought on Medvedev too, because you and I talked about this over the weekend. The other thing too that Medvedev has going for him is he's almost defaulting into being the guy that you root for of this group. Like, it's almost as if
always has been for me.
I've definitely, ever since the U.S. Open thing and the way that he handled it, I have absolutely had a soft place. Like, he's had a place in my heart because of how he handled all of that. And he showed his personality, and he won everyone over. And that always was going to leave me in a place where I was going to root for Daniil Medvedev. But because of the accusations against Zverev, and I've had a couple people reach out to me, like when we've talked about Zverev in the past, like, hey, I don't really know. Just Google, and you will find out. And I think you will understand why we feel the way that we do about Alexander Zverev.
Well, and the way he handles that issue and others with the press, where he has a lot of like rules of like what you can say to him, what you can't, and he pops, he's very much a diva, but that's beside the point.
And then you add in the Tsitsipas stuff, and like all of it, and Dominic Thiem's nowhere to be found. And so all of a sudden, of this group of guys, of the guys that had separated themselves, of the next geners, that we can't really call next geners anymore because they're just
they're here.
They're the guys. Medvedev has put himself in a place where he kind of stands alone. Like, he's kind of the guy. If any of these guys are going to win this tournament, he's the guy that I'm rooting for by singularly. And maybe Tsitsipas I'm still rooting for enough, but like, it's tough.
Okay. I've always liked Medvedev. The thing with me though is like, can you entertain me on the court? That's my number one thing.
100%.
I don't really know these people.
And that's why I was finding myself rooting for Tsitsipas 5 months ago. Like,
I would argue Medvedev to me is even more fascinating on the court.
Yes.
You never know what you're going to get. You might get him crashing into cameras, and you might get him tripping, and he's just such a strange player. But at that size and his movement and to play defense and the mental game that he has, it's just, there's a lot there. He's a lot of fun to watch. Rublev to me is also very fun to watch, like a shorter guy who just hits out so hard every time. Like, I like that they're all different styles. But that sort of stability was interesting. And I don't think the women's game is, quote, stable in any way, but I do think it was worth noting 3 of the 4 women's Wimbledon semifinalists were back there in Cincinnati in the semifinal. Pliskova, Kerber, and Barty. The people who are having good years are having good years.
Yeah.
I will take Pliskova. We can talk Pliskova quickly now. It's like she is stacking up a good year.
No question.
She has a problem with finals. She did not play well against Camilla Giorgi.
Nope.
Giorgi winning that Masters is one of the reasons I love tennis, because
it's so out of nowhere. It's just so absurd. I mean, by the way, it
gives me hope as a Kei Nishikori fan that it's like, maybe like if Giorgi can win a Masters, maybe he could win a Masters, because his career is so much better than hers. But she's a threat and
then she turned around and got smoked by Jessie Pegula in Cincinnati. And I get that, like, she had played so much tennis at that point.
That's tough.
Right.
That is tough. But she is the ultimate ball basher, just like almost no strategy whatsoever, and just hits the ball as hard as she can. She's, been the subject of this story where she supposedly owed money to the mob. She has her crazy dad in the crowd. And oh, by the way, her dad stopped going to her matches like 3 months ago. And now she's having the best 3 months of her.
Interesting.
Mighty
career. Interesting.
So I think she is supposedly kind of like pulling in her margins and maybe not going quite as go for broke. So I love when stories like that pop up. So even though she did win Canada, there's some stability settling in here with the women's tour. Like the players that are playing well in 2021, I think we know who they are.
All right, we're gonna start running out of time here in a second. So I want to go over names that we haven't really spent enough time talking about.
2 big ones that are on my mind.
Okay, well, before you get to because I'm sure that one of the big ones is Naomi, so I'll leave it alone for a second. We do need to talk about Jill Teichmann, because I do think it's a phenomenal. Like, when you bring up Camilla Giorgi's story, go explain Jill Teichmann. Like, go try to figure that out in any way. Not only beating Naomi, not only beating Belinda Bencic, her countrywoman, but also beating Pliskova, as you mentioned, in the semis in order to get there.
As good a run as anyone's had in a tournament all year. If you just look at the names, she beat the Olympic champion, the Australian Open champion, and the Wimbledon finalist in a row.
It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts where that came from with Jill Teichmann. I have no idea what to make of it, other than, for as much as you say, hey, things seem to be coalescing around Barty, this is still more the story of women's tennis than anything else is, which is you're just going to have player, out of nowhere, you might have the French Open semifinals that we had this year. Like, out of nowhere, you just might have a few more of these that are popping up on the women's side of the game. And I'm cool with it. Like, it was a cool thing to see Jill Teichmann make that type of run. I got Casper.
Had a good couple of weeks, I guess, early in the year where she made, some smaller semis and then got hurt. And yeah, I mean, I like it when players stick it to the countries that didn't believe in them. She grew up, lived her whole life in Spain, and they never were into her because there's so many good Spanish players, and so she just played for Swiss, and now she's out there in the finals.
I mean, take that, Spain.
You could use
that,
Spain. I guess you got Badosa, so you're fine.
On the positive side, I had Casper Ruud's name written down. Obviously made a run to the quarters in Cincinnati, beat Diego Schwartzman and Riley Opelka. The week before that, he had gotten a win over Marin Cilic as he went to the quarters. He's stacking good results. I'm not trying to say that he's a threat to break into the group that's ready to go compete to win a major championship.
Well, he's the example. He's the prime example of the guys that skipped the Olympics to try to rack up points. And oh my God, did that work for Casper Ruud? He won 3 straight tiny tournaments that no one was playing on clay in the middle of nowhere. And so when you see like the number 9 next to his seeding at
that's
the US Open.
nonsensical,
Like,
right? Yeah.
You could be like, wait, what? Casper Ruud is the
Right.
9 seed, but that is how you do it. That's how you play the game.
But he has had legitimate results over the last 2 tournaments that matter.
No, he's backing it up. He's
beating good players. And then on the negative side, I hate doing it because he's my guy, but we finally got to see Matteo Bertini again last week for the first time since Wimbledon. And I get it. He had to play FAA, and that's not easy, but he didn't play well at all. Like, he did not play well at all in that match. He was fairly competitive. It was tough. And he didn't play all that well against Ramos Manolas the night before and just kind of got through because he got through. This is the, how do you follow up that breakthrough? Berrettini got his breakthrough, and I do think that he will always be a stronger grass player than he is on other surfaces, but I would have liked to have seen him play better as a whole, not just the fact that, again, losing to FAA is not the end of the world. A lot of guys are going to lose to that dude. But I just wanted to see him play better tennis than what I saw.
Yeah, has some semifinal points from 2019 at the US Open that are still sticking on his ranking. These rankings are finally going to start getting sensible, where you get rid of all these 2019 results that have been holding because of the pandemic. So yeah, he does not enter US Open with much confidence. I'll give you one quick one before we hit the last 2 big names, which is just Gael Monfils is back. He hadn't won a match in like 7 months. I watched a lot of him in the last 2 weeks just because it matched up with my schedule, and I do love him.
I also think that he must have stock in the Tennis Channel, because whenever Gael Monfils is playing, they are sure that is the match on TV.
But played really well the last 2 weeks, won a bunch of matches, was really competitive. And he, who's been, that, I guess that's a case for why those pandemic rankings were in place, because he would have been outside the top 50 or 75, but these old points were propping him up. And just in time, he won some matches to get back feeling good. So I actually think he enters the US Open as a threat to have some fun popcorn matches, make the round of 16, make the quarterfinals, whatever it is. He was playing really well. He just ran out of steam. He never seems to be in the best shape. He always seems to be tired. But he played a lot of matches.
And he hit the shot of the tournament where he faked this sort of side swipe and then went with a tweener that bent around to the back corner. And
he's amazing.
Right.
He's
and
Mayo owns Jabeur. That's what I call him.
You remind yourself like, oh, there's Gael Monfils. That's what I'm getting when I tune in to watch that dude.
Because he was at the point, I think he had lost for 6 or 7 straight months. He cried at multiple press conferences. He needs, I think, a crowd more than anyone. So that was just nice to see him back, a nice value add. Let's do a faller, like my last faller, which is just Naomi not going to the US Open with a much of a head of steam. It's good that she played Cincinnati. She played Coco in in her first match. It was the second round of Cincinnati. It was one of the, worst.
I was so excited for that match. Like, I was so excited to sit down and spend a Tuesday afternoon with that match, and each Wednesday, whatever it was.
Totally understandable because of their history together. I think certain situations are tough to play a certain opponent. Naomi obviously coming off the layoff. They both didn't play well. I think Naomi got going a little bit as the match, but to me, it was more Coco giving her that match. It was not a great Coco match. And then, Osaka follows that up with started really well against Teichmann. That played a really good first set, and then really felt like she just gave it all away. Now Teichmann goes on this long run, and it was kind of like the Olympics when she lost to Vondrousova. And I was like, I swear she didn't play that bad against Vondrousova. Vondrousova was just going off. And then Vondrousova makes the final, and it's like, okay, the result doesn't look as bad.
Right.
But Naomi cannot enter US Open with a boatload of confidence. And I think she's someone that is going to need to play her way into the tournament. I'm glad she played Cincinnati, because I think that's the concern if you're a Serena fan is, you can get a Teichmann in the second round of the US Open, just like Naomi did here at in Cincinnati, and then suddenly you're out. So I think she'll learn from that match, and it'll be good that she got some reps. And I would still make her the second favorite to Barty, but we can get into that when we draw. It's been a bad year since she has almost no points since Australian Open.
I don't want to do this right now, because it's just, we're at the end of the show and it requires so much more. I thought, I'm just being honest with you, Greg, I thought it was a major mistake on her agent's part to address the press conference the way that they did, because I think people tied the comments of the agent to Naomi, and that's unfair.
That was when, so she left the press conference briefly when someone asked, pretty tough question, but not crazy tough, about like how you manage, all your sponsorships with wanting to be private and stuff like that. And she got upset briefly and came back and finished the press conference and had a good rest of the week of press conferences. But yeah, her agent sent out a really silly thing, like
labeling the reporter as a bully. And it's, if you watch the interaction, it's not
it also wasn't that big of a deal. That's
right.
Why
the
column he wrote was a really good column, actually.
It was actually, yeah, Paul Doherty from the Cincinnati Enquirer.
And I honestly, just listening to her, I know it's gonna be made into a big issue, and she's gonna try to do her best, I think, to avoid it. But if you listen to her in press the last couple of weeks, I'm not too concerned about it. Like,
no, I just thought
she had good press, and it was sort of like she seems to be in a good space where she's realizing, gosh, I really want to like get back to just like
playing tennis and
become good again. So I think Cincinnati was the first step in that direction. And I think you're going to see a lot of her on the tour even after the US Open, like in the smaller tournaments and stuff.
I just thought it was a mistake. Her agent's name is Stuart Duguid, and I certainly understand that he's maybe either trying to get attention. I don't know what he was trying to do, but it really
was emotional and trying to stand up for his,
but it
made it a bigger deal than
it was very unfair to her, because then it came off as Naomi Osaka calling this reporter a bully when she didn't do that, and it just wasn't a good look for him.
I mean, I'm amazed how the tide has turned, with a lot of people coming out of the woodwork that are definitely not Osaka fans. But I think it's pretty similar to like the same thing that happened to Serena.
Yeah, it's very similar.
You can have an intelligent conversation about it, but a lot of it is just like
very
people that are coming out of the woodwork.
I've decided I don't like
by
this.
like a black woman, and that's what happens. It's
correct.
Too bad. And then, let's finish on a bad riser note, which is, Alex Zverev just won the Olympics, and Cincinnati playing really good tennis for the most part. He looked like he wanted to give away that Tsitsipas match. I have to admit, I did not watch the Zverev-Rublev final. But look, he
was pretty methodical.
He just won the Olympics in Cincinnati back to back. And the one point I want to make about him is I think he feels good against these other guys in his generation. Like, I think he likes those matchups, and I think he feels like, okay, yeah, he's the one guy where I feel like, okay, the big three is not here, like now it's my time. And it probably helps him too that he had that US Open finals loss, like get that out of the way. We'll see it when he gets in a big spot, but it's it's impressive for him to get that big of a hard court victory right after winning the Olympics is big.
And it sucks. Now I want to make two comments that are unrelated to the actual tennis, if I could quickly. One, big shout out. The book is The Master by Christopher Clarey from the New York Times. It is a 400-page Roger Federer, epic. It covers everything. It's phenomenal. I am probably through 360 pages to this point. I have thoroughly enjoyed reading The Master by Christopher Clarey, who is a longtime tennis journalist who had a lot of access. And
what, he sent you an advanced copy or something?
When
you showed me a picture, I was like, oh, I haven't even heard of that book. And I Googled it, and it's not even out yet.
Oh, it's not out yet?
Here's Glenn.
I apologize. Then I didn't realize that.
At the time you sent it, I think it might have come out this week.
All right.
But I was like, what? Glenn's like an influencer.
Well, I get a lot of books, man. Like, it's the one thing I still get a lot of, and most of them I never do anything with. But like, I got this one, and I was like, well, I'm putting this guy on my show because I was all in. I don't know who's calling me right now, but I don't want to deal with them. And then the other thing was, I just want to give up the being back at a live tennis event, man. And I know you're going to Indian Wells in the fall. There's just nothing like it. And if you get the chance to go, and I'll say the same thing about just about any tournament outside of going to a final, outside of it, you get to a point where you can't. Getting to spend a day bouncing from court to court and watching live tennis the way that I like watching tennis tournaments on my television. There's just such a friggin' joy to it, dude, to be able to go me wander over here and be in the front row to watch Kei Nishikori, and wander over here to be in the third row to watch Yannick Sinner, and then wander back into the stadium for a little while to watch whoever I'm watching. Man, it was so good to have it back. The event in DC, for as small as it is, and like it's all contained within a neighborhood park. Like it is just not a big area where they do this thing, and there is like one permanent structure there throughout the course of the year, and then the tournament just pops up for a week every summer. It's phenomenal. They do an unbelievable job putting it all together, and I was just so happy to have live tennis back in my life, and it genuinely made me think that I'm going to take Labor Day and wander up to New York and go spend the day at the U.S. Open.
That is a fun day.
It is a great day.
I've spent a few when I was back in New York. Yeah, I would say tennis, as much as I love watching it on TV, has as big a difference in terms of the live experience and watching on TV as any sport. And it definitely cranked my love of the sport up another level once I started, going to Indian Wells and going to the US Open. Like, so if you're in Cleveland this week or Chicago, WTA popping up for 250s. Like, I'm telling you, it doesn't need to be like the best players in the world necessarily. Like, I will always be a Daria Kasatkina fan.
But hang on a second. What was the
Daria in Indian Wells in front of 30 people, and was just like, oh my gosh, this woman is so much fun to watch, and she has been, ever since.
Hang on a second. There was a first round match in Winston-Salem that I said to myself, no, how in the world is this a first round?
It Murray Kyrgios? Kyrgios pulled out right before the match started.
There was a chance that the good people of Winston-Salem, North Carolina, were going to get to watch an Andy Murray Nick Kyrgios match on a Monday afternoon. And sadly,
unfortunately, they packed the stadium out for it. They put it in the night session there,
and
Kyrgios pulled out like 20 minutes before.
Oh, hang on a second. By the way, round of 32 is TFO Murray in Winston-Salem.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty friggin' good, man. That's pretty friggin' good. All right, we will be back later on in the week once the draw is out.
Friday.
Yep,
we'll do it Friday.
We'll do a Friday U.S. Open preview. He's Greg. I'm Glenn. This has been Courts of Thunder. Come on, do it for me.
I didn't hear the sound. Courts of Thunder. I mean,
you're right. I'm sorry.
Works shoddy.